Hey, sports fans and not so sports fans. Let's see here. Let's get into this. Okay, just started recording. I am coming at you live with this. Hopefully, I'll be on the side, whatever, as it were. I wanted to cover this, and I think I'll be put off to the side. That's fine. Okay, cool, cool. All right. So, like I was saying before, good grief, everything works. All right. Okay. So, all right. Hey all, Mike here from the first last of the Nerdom, and I just wanted to. I read this article covering it this morning, and I noticed it kind of opened up a interesting. It covered an interesting gap in the coverage of this Disney situation going on. If anybody doesn't know, the big CEO that was hired, that was handpicked by Robert Iger to replace him. Bob Chapek was summarily fired and dismissed in a roundabout way, pretty direct way. Was pretty shocking. This doesn't happen all that much, especially with the premier, biggest media company, arguably in the last, well, ever probably. And of course, Robert Iger's famous during his tenure before he retired, quote retired, for bringing in some of the biggest buys in Disney's history as far as IP goes, Star Wars as well as Marvel. And they have made those, they have been absolutely fantastically, wildly successful. They basically made multiple cash printing machines that are just phenomenal. And about the first 10 years or so, now of late, I'd say the last several years, they've kind of hit a slide into difficulty. And I think that's for two reasons. One, I think there's oversaturation for Star Wars media and Marvel, particularly Marvel content. So people they still show up and go to the movies to see them, but not as much as they used to. And of course, the second event is the pandemic, the COVID. Well, I hear people talking, the talking heads that I like to follow for this entertainment, pop culture stuff. Primarily, a shout out to Midnight's Edge with Andre and I think and Tom, those guys that run that outfit on YouTube. Chris Gore, Film Threat, as well as Valiant, Renegade. There's some other folks too associated, but it's just fascinating to me. Also, I think I can't think of his name, but he's the network executive take on it. He's a newer, younger channel, but great takes that kind of give you the business side. But one of the things that I saw that hasn't been covered is management styles. I've heard a little bit about this and that. I've heard a lot of dunking on Chapek and dunking on Iger too. But the thing that I think that people miss was in this article that I've been looking for is like, what are their leadership styles? What are their styles they're in? And basically, this covers that and gives you a good another z-axis, so to speak, on the X and the Y that have been covered thus far. Because there's a lot of layers to this, and it's not as simple as this guy's out, this guy's in. It's a little bit more into that, and why Bob Iger has had such phenomenal success in Disney, and why the board wanted him to come back. I don't claim to have any inside knowledge on why Chapek was released. He definitely didn't have the touch as far as communications and media goes. I think that a Bob Iger has, and boy, if you want to talk about filling shoes, I mean, this guy, there's not breaking my heart here that he lost his job because I'm not because the guy's basically can buy his own series of islands, and if he so chooses, he's rich beyond any common person's understanding of what rich means, and even then some. So he'll be just fine. But there's definitely at this height and at this elevation, you need somebody that can definitely handle the media, handle investors, handle stars, handle multiple things at once, and whatever you think about Bob Iger, he knows how to do that handily. He's getting older though, and I think that the last I read that he was like in the the final rounds of going to Redbird Capital for their CEO, something like that. I just read a headline, so I'm not going to get too much into that. But anyway, what I did want to cover for this that I think is important is the fact that yes, a lot of folks, a lot of the talking heads are saying, well, he's got to have to clean up his own mess. Well, yes and no. And he wouldn't have got to where he is had he not put the right people in the right position and allowed them to do their thing. And that's the heart of what I haven't heard, seen anybody seen positive or negative for him coming back. The fact that he is one of these leaders who believes in decentralization. And what that means is that he is not sitting there riding roughshod over every little aspect of the business. He delegates and he gives and empowers those leaders underneath them to go and do what they need to. Whatever your thoughts on Kathleen Kennedy or Kevin Feige or all these folks therein, they have made Disney a lot of money. And until they start slipping up really bad, they're going to continue to keep printing money. But I believe this came in where Chapek just wasn't hitting the mark. Certainly, probably at any other CEO role or any other company, probably not as big as Disney. Bob Chapek probably would have been fine for the next several years, more than likely. But not Disney. Disney is not those companies. They are unbelievable. So sorry. Anyway, got phone calls coming in left and right. Do not disturb. Of course, I should have done that. Anyway, getting back to the thing. God damn, that was so interrupting. Anyway, my point is that decentralized nature of his principles of leadership. I don't know that Mr. Iger is going to have what it takes to lead Disney to the next thing, but he doesn't have to. I believe the timeline in this is for another couple years. That'll buy them some time to find that dynamic younger leader that they're looking for to fill those big shoes. And it's really important that they find that. But anyway, this kind of caught my eye, this paragraph. In a report Monday, analyst Michael Nathanson of Nathanson noted that Mr. Iger showed a preference for a more decentralized approach in his first run as CEO. We would not be surprised to see him enact a similar effect this time around. He also upgraded his recommendation on the stock to an outperform rating. And that's all that matters here, because they're living in a stratosphere that we can barely dream of or think about, even in terms of dollars and cents. But in any case, Disney needs somebody at the helm that can lead, and buy them time to find the next rung in the next chapter of the Disney story. It's not just Marvel, it's not just Star Wars, it's not just this, it's not just that. There's a lot of political things there. Disney is a recent favorite political punching bag for a lot of folks, either on the left or the right. None of that really matters so much. Not really when it comes down to it, because at the end of the day, you're still going to go to the movie theater and you're still going to see a movie. Without regard to the content or what IP it's attached to, there are people that are going to show up. Now, the thing that has happened the last year or so is pretty much, and by no stretch of the imagination have any of the recent crop of Marvel films been flops. They have not. They've still been very successful, way more successful than any DC property of recent note. But then again, there's a scale there. There's a spectrum to what is really good for DC films and comics, and what is good for Marvel. And Marvel still outperforms DC by leaps and bounds, as it were. But in any case, there's been a slide in attendance at theaters and these properties. Some of that can be attributed to oversaturation. Still think there's a hunger for this genre, for superhero genre. I'm not so sure that there's a hunger for a Star Wars movie, but that's a different animal. That has its own kind of pressures and stresses on it, as it were. And there's all kinds of stuff in there. But, I definitely have been a Star Wars fan for a long time. It's fun to watch. But the last few shows, I've just kind of decided that I'll return later on when there's something more interesting there. Because it sure seemed like they would just kind of trot out an old character favorite, minor or major, and they kind of let them do their thing, and then all of a sudden, that you just get a little bit of a bite, a little bit of a glimpse, and they're in any case. I just wanted to kind of cover this real quick. But anyway, that has nothing to do with anything really. As a standpoint here, I don't know what this means. I do know that they need a steady hand. None of this is going to be a huge flop or anything like that for Disney. But I think that they know that the world is changing. It's a different era. And much as they regripped their newer IP and tossed out absolute winners for the first decade of the Marvel Phase 1 through whatever, I'm not editing whatever, and in the first Disney ones, Star Wars ones, um, were wildly successful. I think Endgame made something like $2.25 billion at what by the time it was all said and done, something like that. It's insane. We're never going to see heights like that anytime soon, I believe. I think that they're going to have diminishing returns. Maybe that changes, maybe not. There is kind of this weird, strange thing where Hollywood has always been able to kind of weather recessions and downturns and this and that. People still want to be entertained and they still show up to the theater. But as time has gone on, we were racked with the pandemic. That's a big stone, big boulder, if not half a mountain that got thrown in the river to gum things up, not just for Disney, but for everything aspects. So we all stayed home a little bit more. We all paid a little bit more for streaming. And now people are kind of pulling back on that. And there's a lot of unease in Hollywood and in the entertainment sector to how they want to use streaming going into the future, how it works with movie releases and whatnot. There's a lot of back and forth that has been a lot of ink spilt over the last several months. And we're in a new era. But I do think that it's not going to be the same as it always was. I think things will get up back to where they were eventually. But people got to remember, in 2019, the average global yearly take for movies was like something like 40 to 50 billion. I think 48 billion, something like that. I'm kind of talking offhand because I heard these figures last few days, and that was halved down to nowhere near that in 2020, and even 2021 when things started to open back up and kind of come back alive. They still didn't make near that. I think they made like half that. And now we're just getting in this year, and the year's still in play here. So who knows what will happen? But I think it's important to highlight that we're not even back to like the normal revenue level of like where people going and seeing movies and whatnot, to where we were back before all this stuff happened with COVID and the coof, whatever. Hopefully I don't get dinged with that on YouTube. Who knows? They have so silly, goofy community guidelines that don't make any sense, and they certainly don't follow and apply those equally across the board. But they don't have to. If you don't like it, go make a video somewhere else. But hopefully, I just wanted to get this out and kind of see basically. Read a couple articles from this. Shout out to the Wall Street Journal. They have good coverage for these things. I prefer to kind of follow financials because even though you can still be lied to and whatnot, and there's always going to be a lean or opinion behind things for the most part. When it comes to dollars and cents in the market, those are factual things that nobody can really pencil whip, or they can for a time. But at some point, somebody's going to come out, or somebody's going to be beholden to shareholders, and somebody's going to be mad, and they're going to get the lawyers involved, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why I trust the financials a little bit more than I do straight hard news organizations. Of course, there are none anymore. The MSNBCs and Fox Newses of the world. They decided that they wanted to play the political pundit game a long time ago and just lean in for the easy to reach crowd, the ones that are right in front of them. So. And it is what it is. So if you want more in-depth coverage of this kind of thing, let me know. But I just wanted to kind of read this a little bit, and one of the ones that stood out was Mr. Iger's main job, likely his toughest, will be to get right what he didn't before. Succession at Disney has long been a dramatic affair. Mr. Iger himself lost top candidates in the few years prior to Mr. Chapek landing the job. Analyst Doug so-and-so Crowin wrote Monday that the latest move creates significant instability around the Disney CEO role. It is one unlike any other in Hollywood in that it involves managing both a massive movie and TV production business while also juggling theme parks, cruise ships, and toys. And really, toys kind of fell off a deep cliff as it goes to for certain property and IP. People just aren't buying them like they were. I don't think that's because Disney screwed the pooch on their approach to things. I think that definitely has a part in it. But it's just we live in an era of iPads and iPhones and endless entertainment from any kind of segment or aspect that you could do. Video games, movies, TV show. There's all kinds of things out there that are competing for kids' attention, and more importantly, competing for the parents' attention to go buy them that stuff. So it is a far different world than when I was a kid, and you have an allowance. You go to Walmart or Target or whatever you could, and you spend your $5 on an action figure or whatever it was, or cars or toys or whatever. It's like that, but exponentially even more wider and bigger and deeper for that. So yeah, I don't think this is the toys thing is one that is they're sure going to be toys all the time, but not quite like when we were kids growing up. Of course, when I say we were kids, I mean that millennial Gen X. That there's that segment there that kind of overlaps in particular. But one of the thing that is, well, what else? Oh, with the decentralized thing I wanted to cover, and then, there's a growing segment of Disney shareholders who are going to be point blank asking more from Disney. So there's big shoes to fill here. Excuse me. And Disney, as you can see, and this is part of the reason why Chapek was summarily dismissed. This cannot happen. This is not Disney normal. This is okay for a little bit of the time, especially when it relates to the pandemic, where everybody was getting hit. But as it rose, it sure has fell quite a bit. So when you're negative 35, 38, 40% of your stock price in a year. That's alarming. That is tremendously alarming, and it's gonna get people fired, and it's gonna get things changed up until they go back to the board went back to what they knew worked, and they must have given him a hell of a deal to come back. But don't count the man out. Hopefully, let's just hope that like Zaslav over at Warner Brothers, HBO. He has a little bit more power than a Chapek did. Chapek really came in with his hands tied as far as what he could and couldn't do too. That and there's been a theory there that he was just pretty much put in the boat, and if he succeeded, great. If not, no problem. He would take the fall and then get swept away. And 2 years from now, nobody's going to be saying Bob Chapek's name at all. Of course, he is going to get paid off the rest of his contract. I do find it curious, though, that Chapek's contract was renewed in June of this year to keep the wheels turning. So that must have been interesting. I do think that it came as a surprise to him. But of course, at that level, for the amount of money you're being paid, you're going to be quiet, and as he should be. That's his business, without regard to anything else. But this is we'll see what happens. Hope springs eternal. I don't hold that something amazing is going to happen from all this. Disney still is kind of like there's a tangled mess that is Star Wars, where they don't quite know what or where they're going. And if they do, we'll be the last ones to know about it. But it's just interesting. I think Chapek's style was more of a command and control, top-down type leader, from what I've heard and what I've read. Bob here is far more better all around leader for what they're looking for. Does he still have the touch? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think he still has a touch? We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I just wanted to get this out there and kind of give my 2 cents for aspects of this that people weren't considering, and they also weren't giving due credit where due. Disney still makes boatloads of money. They're still a great bet for the stock market. Your 401ks are still going to have some kind of a Disney stock just like Coke or General Motors or whatever, the ones that always perform. But we are in a new world, and who knows? It's just like the fortune cookie that says, the adage that says, "May you live in interesting times." Boy, that's so true today, as it always has been. And I don't think things are going to settle down or slow down at all. I think the world will adapt, and we'll find out. Hopefully, that the nerdom, will be able to return to good quality writing, good quality stories. If you have those two aspects and you do your due diligence and you write and execute on that, of course, it's always going to be up to the audience to decide. But these companies need to put a little bit more stock back in the audience. You need to be creating art around that, to where you're not beating somebody over the head with how they should think or feel or whatnot. That's just not going to work. May work in the short term, but it's not going to work over the long term. Of course, these companies aren't making masterpieces, churning out things like that. They do business on a whole different scale that I don't even pretend to understand or know. Just as a simple common consumer, to consume. But in any case, this has been long enough. I just wanted to get this out. Don't forget to see and check out our show, The First to Last of Nerdom, on Wednesdays. We have a grab bag coming out tomorrow. I hope you all have a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. And I hope, and I'm going to go. I am not feeling great. Anyway, in any case, have fun, and we'll see you later.